The conference room at Westfield Manufacturing was packed with people. Engineers sat around the long table with their laptops open. Department heads checked their phones nervously. Expensive consultants from the city shuffled through thick reports. Everyone looked tired and frustrated. They had been dealing with the same problem for 3 long months and nobody could fix it. The assembly line kept stopping. It would run smoothly for a few hours, then suddenly jam up. When it jammed, everything had to stop. Workers stood around waiting. The company lost money every single minute the line was not running. Thousands of dollars went down the drain each week. At first, the engineers thought it was a simple mechanical problem. They checked every bolt and screw. They oiled every moving part. They replaced worn-out pieces with brand new ones. The problem kept happening. Then they thought maybe it was the computer system. They brought in software experts who stared at screens full of code for days. They updated programs. They reset the whole system. Still, the line kept jamming. The CEO, Mr. Richardson, was losing his patience. He was a big man with gray hair who usually smiled a lot. But lately he had not been smiling at all. This problem was costing the company too much money. If they could not fix it soon, he might have to lay off workers. That thought kept him awake at night. He had called this emergency meeting to find a solution. Any solution. He did not care how much it cost anymore. He just wanted his factory running properly again. At the back of the conference room near the door stood a woman in a simple blue uniform. Her name was Elena. She was the night shift cleaning lady. She had worked at Westfield Manufacturing for 15 years. Every evening at 6 o'clock, she clocked in and started her work. She mopped floors, emptied trash cans, cleaned bathrooms, and wiped down machines. Elena was 52 years old. She had kind eyes and rough hands from years of hard work. She lived in a small apartment with her daughter and 2 grandchildren. Her husband had passed away 7 years ago. The job at the factory paid her bills and put food on the table. She was grateful for it. She was not supposed to be at this meeting. But she had been cleaning the hallway outside when Mr. Richardson's assistant had told her to wait. They would need the conference room cleaned right after the meeting ended. So Elena stood quietly at the back, holding her cleaning cart, trying not to be in anyone's way. The head engineer, Dr. Peterson, stood at the front of the room. He was a thin man with glasses who always carried a tablet computer. He had 3 degrees from fancy universities. Everyone respected his knowledge. Right now he looked exhausted. "We have run every test possible," Dr. Peterson said, pointing to charts on the screen. "The metal fatigue is within normal range. The hydraulic pressure is stable. The electrical systems check out perfectly. There is no logical reason for these jams." A woman from the maintenance department raised her hand. Could it be the raw materials? Maybe some batches are slightly different sizes. Dr. Peterson shook his head. "We checked that. Every piece is measured before it goes on the line. They are all identical." "What about temperature?" another engineer asked. "Could heat be expanding something?" "We monitored that for 2 weeks straight," Dr. Peterson answered. "Temperature stays constant." The room fell silent. People shifted in their chairs. Someone coughed. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. One of the expensive consultants cleared his throat. He had flown in from Chicago and was charging $500 per hour. "Mr. Richardson, in my professional opinion, you need to shut down the entire line. Take it apart piece by piece. Inspect everything. It will take about a week and cost around $200,000. But it is the only way to find the problem." Mr. Richardson closed his eyes and rubbed his forehead. $200,000. Plus the money lost from stopping production for a whole week. It would be a disaster. But what choice did he have? "Is everyone in agreement?" Mr. Richardson asked, looking around the table. "Does anyone have any other ideas?" The engineers looked at each other. Nobody spoke. They had tried everything they could think of. Their education, their experience, their expensive equipment. Nothing had worked. They felt defeated. Elena stood at the back of the room listening to everything. She understood only some of the technical words they used. Words like hydraulic and tolerance and calibration meant nothing to her. She had never gone to college. She had barely finished high school. But she had been listening carefully to every word. More importantly, she had been watching. For 15 years she had watched that assembly line. She saw it every single night while everyone else had gone home. She knew that factory better than she knew her own apartment. She mopped around those machines. She cleaned under those conveyor belts. She emptied the trash bins near those workstations and she had noticed something. Something that nobody else seemed to see. Her heart started beating faster. Should she say something? No, that was crazy. She was just a cleaning lady. These were smart people with college degrees and years of training. What could she possibly tell them that they did not already know? But she thought about the workers on the floor. Good people like her who needed their jobs. If the line shut down for a week, some of them might not get paid. Some families might struggle. She thought about Maria, who worked the second shift and had 4 children. She thought about old Mr. Chen, who was hoping to work 2 more years before retirement. Elena's hands gripped her cleaning cart tighter. Her palms were sweating. She had never spoken in a meeting before. She had never even been asked to speak. People like her were meant to be invisible. Do your job quietly and go home. That was the rule. But something inside her pushed her forward. Maybe it was seeing the worry on Mr. Richardson's face. Maybe it was thinking about her fellow workers. Maybe it was just the feeling that she actually knew something important. Slowly, very slowly, Elena raised her hand. At first, nobody noticed. She was standing at the back and everyone was focused on the front of the room. She raised her hand higher. Mr. Richardson was about to speak when he saw movement in the corner of his eye. He turned and saw Elena with her hand up. He looked surprised. Very surprised, yes? He said gently. Did you need something? Every head in the room turned to look at her. Elena felt her face grow hot. She wanted to lower her hand and disappear, but she had come this far. She had to keep going. I am sorry to interrupt, she said quietly. Her voice shook a little.
But I think I might know what is causing the problem. The room went completely silent.
You could have heard a pin drop. Engineers stared at her with confused faces. The expensive consultant from Chicago raised his eyebrows. Dr. Peterson looked almost offended. Who was this cleaning lady? What could she possibly know about complex manufacturing systems? She probably could not even read their technical reports. But Mr. Richardson had not built a successful company by ignoring people. He had learned long ago that good ideas could come from anywhere. Even from unexpected places, please, he said, gesturing toward the front of the room. Come up here. Tell us what you think. Elena took a deep breath. She let go of her cleaning cart and walked toward the front of the conference room. Her legs felt weak. Every eye in the room was on her. She could feel their doubt, their skepticism. She was wearing her cleaning uniform with her name stitched on the pocket. She was carrying a rag in her hand, but she knew what she had seen. She had seen it dozens of times. And if these smart people with their degrees and computers and tests had not figured it out yet, maybe they needed someone who looked at things differently. Maybe they needed someone who actually paid attention to the simple things. Elena reached the front of the room and turned to face everyone. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it, but her voice when she spoke was steady. May I use the board? She asked. Elena had started working at Westfield Manufacturing 15 years ago. Back then her husband was still alive. He had worked in construction, and she had stayed home with their daughter. But when he got sick, everything changed. Medical bills piled up. They needed money desperately. Elena had never worked outside the home before, but she found this cleaning job and took it. At first, she felt nervous about working in a factory. The machines were loud and scary. The building was huge, like a maze. She got lost trying to find the bathrooms on her first day. But she needed the job, so she learned quickly. The night shift was perfect for her schedule. She could make breakfast for her daughter in the morning, see her off to school, take a nap in the afternoon, and then go to work at 6 in the evening. She worked until midnight, then came home and slept until her daughter woke up. It was tiring, but it worked. When her husband died, she thought about quitting. The grief was too heavy, but her daughter convinced her to keep going. Dad would want you to keep working, her daughter said. He was proud of you. So Elena stayed. Over the years, she became part of the factory. Not in an obvious way. She was not important like the engineers or the managers. She did not make decisions or attend meetings. She just cleaned. But she was there every single night, moving through the building like a quiet shadow. Most people did not really see her. They would walk past her mopping the floor without even saying hello. Some people were kind and would nod or smile, but many treated her like she was invisible, like she was just part of the building, like the walls or the lights. Elena did not mind too much. She understood. People were busy with their own work and their own problems. She was not there to make friends. She was there to earn money for her family, but being invisible had given her something special. It had given her the chance to really see. When you are invisible, people act natural around you. They do not put on shows or pretend. They just go about their business. And if you pay attention, if you really watch, you learn things. Elena learned the rhythms of the factory. She knew which machines ran hot and which ran cool. She knew which workers were careful and which ones rushed. She knew where people took shortcuts and where they followed the rules exactly. She knew that the second shift always arrived 15 minutes early and gathered by the time clock, drinking coffee and talking about their families. She knew that the maintenance crew liked to eat lunch near the south loading dock, because that is where the breeze came through. She knew that every Friday Mr. Richardson walked through the factory floor, stopping to talk with workers and shake their hands. She also knew the assembly line better than almost anyone. She cleaned around it every single night. While the engineers went home at 5 o'clock, she arrived an hour later and spent 6 hours moving around those machines. She mopped under the conveyor belts where grease and small metal pieces collected. She emptied trash bins filled with discarded packaging. She wiped down control panels that workers touched with dirty hands all day. She cleaned the floors around every station, every junction, every inspection point. At first, she had been afraid to get too close to the machines. They were big and powerful. But over time, she relaxed. She learned their sounds. The assembly line had a rhythm like a heartbeat. When everything was working right, it hummed steadily. When something was wrong, the rhythm changed. Elena could hear the difference. She also watched the repair crews when they came. When the line jammed, maintenance workers would rush over with their tools. Elena would be nearby, mopping or dusting, and she would listen to them talk, check the sensor, one would say. Could be the alignment, another would suggest maybe the pressure valve is sticking. Elena did not understand most of the technical words, but she understood the process. They were looking for what was different, what had changed. They were trying to find the thing that should not be there. She started paying more attention when the line jammed. She would note the time. She would look around to see what was happening. Over weeks and months, she noticed patterns. The jams never happened in the morning. Never during the first shift that ran from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. The line ran perfectly during those hours. The jams always happened during the second shift. That shift ran from 2 in the afternoon until 10 at night. And the jams usually happened in the first few hours between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. Sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, but always in that general time. Elena wondered about this. Why would the time of day matter? The machines did not know what time it was. They just ran. She also noticed something else. Something about the workspace around the third conveyor junction. That was the spot where the line always jammed. The engineers knew this too. They had focused all their attention on that junction, testing every part of it over and over. But they never found anything wrong with the machinery itself. Elena cleaned that area every night. There were 6 large plastic bins stacked there. They were storage bins for materials that workers used during their shifts. Each bin was about 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. When empty, they were light. When full, they were heavy. The bins were supposed to be stored in a designated area about 20 feet away. There were painted lines on the floor showing exactly where they should go, but Elena noticed that the second shift workers often did not put the bins in the right place. Instead, they stacked them right next to their workstation at the third junction. She understood why. The designated storage area was far away. If you were working fast, trying to meet your quota, you did not want to walk 20 extra feet every time you needed something from a bin. It was easier to keep them close. Elena had mentioned this once to a supervisor about 2 years ago, not as a complaint, just as an observation. Should I move those bins to the painted area when I clean? She had asked. The supervisor had barely looked up from his clipboard. If they are in your way, sure. Otherwise, do not worry about it. So Elena left the bins where the workers put them. It was not her job to tell people where to stack things. She was just the cleaning lady, but she kept noticing the bins. They were always in slightly different positions, sometimes closer to the conveyor belt, sometimes farther away. It depended on who was working that day and how busy they were. And then about a month ago, Elena had been cleaning near the third junction around 3 in the afternoon. She had come in early that day because she needed to leave early for a doctor's appointment. The second shift was working, and she was trying to stay out of their way. She was mopping the floor about 10 feet from the junction when she heard the alarm. The loud beeping sound that meant the line was jamming. Workers stepped back. The supervisor came running over. The maintenance crew was called. Elena moved her mop bucket to the side and waited. While everyone crowded around the machinery, she looked around the area. Her eyes fell on the plastic bins. They were stacked close to the conveyor belt. Very close, maybe just a few inches away, and then she noticed something. Something small. One of the bins was touching a metal pole that had a black box attached to it. She did not know what the black box was, but she had cleaned around it enough to know it was some kind of sensor or detector. The engineers had pointed to it before when they were doing tests. Elena watched as a maintenance worker reached over and moved the bin slightly to get better access to the machinery. As soon as he moved the bin, the alarm stopped. The supervisor said something about resetting the system, and a few minutes later, the line started running again. Everyone assumed the reset had fixed it. But Elena wondered, what if moving the bin had fixed it? She did not say anything. It seemed too simple, too obvious. These engineers were smart people. They had tested everything. If moving a bin could fix the problem, they would have figured that out already. Right? But then she started watching more carefully. Every time she came to work, she looked at where the bins were positioned. And she noticed something interesting. On the nights when the bins were far from the sensor pole, there had been no jams that day. She could tell because the production count posted on the wall would be high. But on the nights when the bins were close to the pole, the count was lower. That meant the line had been stopped during the shift. Elena was not a scientist. She had not gone to college. She did not know how to prove what she was seeing with tests and data. But she trusted her eyes. She had been watching for a month, and the pattern was clear. The bins were causing the jams. But how? They were not touching the machinery. They were just sitting there a few inches away from a sensor. How could that matter? Then she remembered something else. She had been cleaning the factory long enough to notice other patterns too, like how the building changed throughout the day. In the morning, the factory was cool. The big air conditioning units would turn on around 10 o'clock, when the temperature outside started rising. By afternoon, especially in the warmer months, the AC was running constantly. Elena had learned that buildings move. Not in big ways that you can see, but in tiny ways. When metal gets hot, it expands. When it gets cool, it contracts. Old Mr. Chen from maintenance had explained this to her once when she asked why a door that was easy to open in the morning was harder to close in the afternoon. Mr. Richardson nodded at Elena. Of course, use the board. Please show us what you are thinking. Elena walked to the whiteboard at the front of the room. Someone handed her a marker. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her every move. She could almost hear what they were thinking. What could the cleaning lady possibly know? Dr. Peterson leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed. His expression said he was being polite, but he clearly did not expect anything useful. The consultant from Chicago checked his watch. He had a flight to catch later. Elena stood in front of the blank whiteboard. For a moment, her mind went completely blank. What was she doing? These people had spent months trying to solve this problem. They had degrees and experience and expensive equipment. She had a mop and a bucket, but then she thought about her daughter. When her daughter was little and learning to ride a bike, she had been scared. I cannot do it, Mama, she had cried. Elena had knelt down and looked her in the eyes. You can do hard things, she had said. You are braver than you think. Now Elena needed to take her own advice. She could do hard things. She just needed to show them what she had seen. She uncapped the marker and started to draw. Her lines were not as straight as the engineer's computer diagrams, but they were clear enough. She drew a simple outline of the assembly line as she remembered it, the long conveyor belts, the workstations, the junction points where pieces came together. This is the assembly line, she said. Her voice was soft, but in the quiet room everyone could hear her. I clean around it every night, so I know it pretty well. She marked several spots along her drawing. These are the junction points, the places where the conveyor belts meet. Then she circled one spot in particular. This is the third junction. This is where the line always stops, yes? Dr. Peterson sat up a little straighter. Yes, that is correct. How did you know that? Elena almost smiled. I clean there every night. When the line jams during the day, the maintenance crew leaves tools and equipment around that area. I have to clean around them. So I know that is the problem spot. A few people in the room nodded. That made sense. Elena continued drawing. She added some squares near the third junction. These are the plastic storage bins, the big ones that hold materials for the workers. There are usually 6 of them stacked here. Those bins are supposed to be stored over there, Elena said, drawing another spot about 20 feet away. There are painted lines on the floor showing where they go. But the second shift workers do not always put them there. They keep them close to their workstation because it is easier. A woman from the production department spoke up. I have told them to follow the floor markings, but when we are busy, people take shortcuts. We have been focused on keeping production moving, not on where they stack bins. Elena nodded. I understand. I am not saying anyone did anything wrong. I am just telling you what I see every night. She drew a small rectangle near the bins. This is a metal pole with a black box on it. I do not know what it is called, but I clean around it. It is some kind of sensor, I think. That is the safety sensor, Dr. Peterson said. He stood up and walked closer to the board. It detects if anything gets too close to the moving parts. If something breaks the sensor field, it automatically stops the line to prevent accidents. Yes, Elena said. I thought it might be something like that. She drew a line showing the space between the bins and the sensor pole. The bins are usually stacked very close to this pole. Sometimes they are just a few inches away. Dr. Peterson frowned, but the sensor has a specific range. A few inches away should not trigger it. The objects have to actually enter the sensor field, which starts about 1 inch from the housing. I know, Elena said quietly, but I think something else is happening. The room was completely silent now. Everyone was leaning forward, paying attention. Even the consultant from Chicago had put his phone away. Elena took a breath. This was the part she was most nervous about. She did not have any proof. She just had her observations and her theory. I have noticed a pattern, she said. The line never jams during the first shift in the morning. It always jams during the second shift in the afternoon, usually between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. Dr. Peterson pulled out his tablet and started scrolling through data. His eyes widened. She is right. Every single jam in the past 3 months has occurred between 2:15 and 4:30 in the afternoon. How did we miss that? One of the other engineers spoke up. We looked at the time data, but we thought it was just coincidence. We were focused on finding a mechanical or electrical fault, Elena continued. I also noticed that the jams happen more on hot days, and they happen more often in this season than they did in the winter. Mr. Richardson leaned forward. What are you thinking, Elena? What does the time of day and the temperature have to do with it? Elena felt her confidence growing. They were listening to her. Really listening. I think the building moves, she said. Several people looked confused. Moves? Someone asked. What do you mean? Mr. Chen from maintenance explained it to me once, Elena said. He told me that buildings change size during the day. Metal expands when it gets hot and contracts when it gets cold. Just tiny amounts, but it happens. Dr. Peterson snapped his fingers. Thermal expansion. Of course. He turned to his colleagues. The building frame is metal. When the afternoon sun heats it up and when the air conditioning runs to cool the interior, it creates temperature differentials. The metal could shift. Even just a few millimeters, another engineer added, getting excited. That is all it would take. Elena felt relieved. They understood what she was trying to say. So in the afternoon, when the building shifts a little bit, I think those bins move closer to the sensor. Just a tiny bit. Maybe not even enough to see, but enough to trigger it. She pointed to her drawing. The workers stack the bins in slightly different positions every day. Some days they are farther from the sensor, and those are the days with no jams. Some days they are closer, and those are the days with jams. The room exploded with conversation. Engineers were pulling up data on their tablets. People were talking over each other, running calculations, checking logs. Dr. Peterson looked stunned. It is so simple, he said. We were analyzing machine tolerances to the micrometer. We were checking electrical signals. We were testing material strength. But we never looked at the physical workspace. We never considered that something as simple as where workers place storage bins could affect the sensor. The consultant from Chicago stood up. This is actually brilliant. The building settling creates micro-shifts in the position of objects on the floor. The bins act as a variable because they are not fixed in place. And the thermal expansion explains why it only happens in the afternoon. He looked at Elena with new respect. How long have you been studying this? Elena felt her face grow warm. I have not been studying it. I just noticed it. I have been watching for about a month. Every night when I come to clean, I look at where the bins are. And I noticed that on nights when they are far from the pole, the production count is higher. That means no jams happened that day. A young engineer raised his hand. We can test this right now. We can check the exact position of the bins and the sensor, and we can measure if there is any interference. Mr. Richardson stood up. Do it. Right now. Dr. Peterson, take a team down to the floor and verify Elena's theory. Dr. Peterson nodded and headed for the door. 3 other engineers followed him. They practically ran out of the conference room. Everyone else waited. Elena stood at the front of the room, still holding the marker. She felt strange. For 15 years, she had been invisible in this building. Now everyone was looking at her like she was important. Mr. Richardson walked over to her. Thank you for speaking up, he said warmly. I know that took courage. Elena shook her head. I almost did not say anything. I thought I would sound foolish. You are the opposite of foolish, Mr. Richardson said. You saw something that all our experts missed. Do you know why? Elena did not know how to answer. Because you were there, Mr. Richardson continued. You were there every single day, watching and noticing. The engineers go home at 5. The day shift workers do not see the second shift. Everyone sees only their small piece of the puzzle. But you see the whole picture because you are there when everyone else is gone. A woman from the production department came over. I want to apologize, she said to Elena. I have walked past you 100 times and never stopped to talk. I never asked your opinion about anything. I thought you were just... Well, I did not really think about you at all. I'm sorry, Elena smiled. It is okay. I know people are busy. It is not okay, the woman said firmly. You work here just like the rest of us. Your observations matter. Your ideas matter. I will not make that mistake again. 15 minutes later, Dr. Peterson came back into the conference room. He was out of breath from running. His face was flushed with excitement. She is absolutely right, he announced. The bins are positioned exactly 3.5 inches from the sensor housing. We measured the sensor field. It extends exactly 3 inches from the housing under normal conditions, but we tested it while the air conditioning cycled on and the building did shift. We could measure it with our precision instruments. The floor settled by approximately 2 millimeters. That is enough to move those bins into the edge of the sensor field. He shook his head in amazement. We have been searching for a complex technical failure. But the problem was simple. The bins were too close to the sensor, and the building's natural movement pushed them into the detection range. Mr. Richardson turned to the consultant from Chicago. I believe that means we do not need to shut down the line for a week and spend $200,000. The consultant laughed. No, you definitely do not. Just move the bins to their proper storage location, or install a barrier to keep them at a safe distance from the sensor. Problem solved for $0. Everyone in the room started clapping. Elena felt tears in her eyes. She had done it. She had actually helped. These smart, educated people had been stuck, and she, the simple cleaning lady, had given them the answer they needed. But as the applause died down, Elena felt something else. Not just pride, but also a question. How many other problems in the world could be solved if people just paid attention? If they listened to the people who were actually there, doing the work, seeing the details? She thought about all the times she had noticed things and kept quiet. All the times she had seen inefficiencies or problems, but assumed someone smarter than her would handle it. All the times she had felt like her opinion did not matter, because she did not have a fancy degree. Maybe that needed to change. Not just for her, but for everyone like her. The meeting was breaking up. People were leaving to go test the solution and implement the fix. Mr. Richardson asked Elena to stay for a moment. I want to talk to you, he said. I think we need to have a serious conversation about your role in this company. Elena's heart skipped. Was she in trouble? Had she overstepped somehow? But Mr. Richardson was smiling. A big, genuine smile. How would you like a new job? He asked. Elena stared at Mr. Richardson. A new job? She did not understand. Was she being fired from cleaning? Did she do something wrong by speaking up? Mr. Richardson must have seen the worry on her face because he quickly added, a promotion, a real position where you can use your skills. My skills? Elena said quietly. I clean floors. No, Mr. Richardson said firmly. You observe. You notice things. You think about what you see. Those are valuable skills, Elena. Very valuable. He gestured for her to sit down. Most of the other people had left the conference room. Only a few remained. including Dr. Peterson, who was still looking at his tablet with a stunned expression. "Let me explain what just happened here," Mr. Richardson said. "We had a problem that was costing us thousands of dollars every week. I hired the best engineers. I brought in expensive consultants. We ran tests and analysis for 3 months, and we found nothing." He smiled at Elena. "Then you, in less than 5 minutes, explained exactly what was wrong. Do you know why we could not figure it out?" Elena shook her head. "Because we were looking in the wrong place," Mr. Richardson said. "We were focused on the machines. We were analyzing computer data. We were measuring mechanical tolerances. We never looked at the human element. We never considered how workers actually use the space. We never thought about the simple things like where people put their bins." Dr. Peterson looked up from his tablet. "He is right. We made it too complicated. We assumed the problem had to be technical because it was happening to a technical system. We forgot that workplaces are not just machines. They are spaces where people work, and people do not always follow the rules exactly as written." "That is not a criticism," Mr. Richardson added quickly. "People take shortcuts because they are trying to be efficient. The second shift workers put those bins close to their station because walking 20 feet every time wastes time. They were just trying to do their jobs well. Nobody thought it would cause a problem." Elena nodded. She understood that. She took shortcuts too sometimes. Like when she was supposed to empty her cleaning bucket in the big utility sink on the north side. But if she was working on the south side, she would use the smaller sink there. It saved 5 minutes. "But here is what amazes me," Mr. Richardson continued. "You not only noticed the bins, you noticed the pattern of when the jams happened. You connected it to the time of day, to the temperature, to the building settling. That is analytical thinking. That is problem solving." Elena felt embarrassed. "I just paid attention. I did not do anything special." "That is exactly what made it special," Dr. Peterson said. He had put down his tablet and was looking at Elena with genuine admiration. "You did not have any assumptions. You did not have theories about what should be happening. You just looked at what was actually happening. That is pure observation. That is scientific method at its most basic. And somehow we forgot to do that." He laughed, but it was not a mean laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had learned something important. "I have 2 PhD degrees. I have published papers in engineering journals. I have worked in manufacturing for 20 years. And I got outsmarted by someone watching where workers put their storage bins. That is humbling." "You did not get outsmarted," Elena said. "You just did not have the information. You were not here at night. You did not see what I saw." "Exactly," Mr. Richardson said. "Which is why we need to make some changes around here. We need to make sure we are getting information from everyone, not just engineers and managers. Everyone who works in this building sees things. We need to listen to them." He turned to Elena. "I want to create a new position. I am calling it Operational Observer. Your job would be to watch how things work in this factory, to notice problems, to talk to workers, to see the patterns that the rest of us miss because we are too busy or too focused on our own tasks." Elena's eyes widened. "You want to pay me to watch?" "I want to pay you to see," Mr. Richardson corrected. "There is a difference. Lots of people watch. Not many people truly see. You see? What about my cleaning job?" Elena asked. "I need to work. I have my daughter and my grandchildren to support." "This would pay triple what you make now," Mr. Richardson said. "Day shift, regular hours. You would walk the floor, observe operations, talk to workers, and report back to me weekly about what you notice. Things that could be improved. Problems before they become expensive. Ideas that workers have but are afraid to share." Elena could barely breathe. Triple her current salary? That would change everything for her family. She could help her daughter more. She could maybe even save some money, but doubt crept in. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate this. I really do. But I am not educated. I do not know the technical words. I never went to college." "Good," Mr. Richardson said, surprising her. "If you knew all the technical words, you might think like an engineer. You might miss the simple things. I need someone who sees things clearly, without all the complicated theories getting in the way." Dr. Peterson nodded in agreement. "Some of the best problem solvers I have ever met did not have fancy degrees. They just had common sense and the ability to pay attention. You have both." Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. For 15 years she had felt invisible. She had done her job quietly, never expecting recognition or advancement. She had accepted that this was her place in life. She cleaned floors. That was what she did. That was who she was. But now someone was telling her that she could be more. That she already was more. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Mr. Richardson said. Take all the time you need. But Elena, I want you to know something. What you did today was not luck. It was skill. You earned this opportunity. That night, Elena went home and told her daughter everything. They sat at the small kitchen table drinking tea, while Elena described the meeting and the offer. Her daughter cried. Happy tears. Mama, you have to take it. This is amazing. I am scared, Elena admitted. What if I fail? What if I cannot do it? Her daughter took her hand. You already did it. You solved their problem. You can do it again. Elena thought about this. Her daughter was right. She had already proven she could do it. The question was, did she believe in herself enough to try? She remembered what she had told her daughter years ago, when she was learning to ride a bike. You can do hard things. You are braver than you think. Okay, Elena said. I will take the job. The next day, Elena went back to the factory, but this time she did not bring her cleaning cart. She wore her nicest clothes, a simple dress she usually saved for church. Mr. Richardson met her at his office and gave her a tour of the factory from a completely different perspective. They walked the floor together. He introduced her to department heads and shift supervisors. He showed her the different production lines and explained how everything connected. Elena listened carefully, asked questions, and took notes in a small notebook Mr. Richardson had given her. This is your notebook, he said. Write down everything you notice. No observation is too small, no question is too simple. Over the next few weeks, Elena learned her new job. It was strange at first. She felt awkward just walking around and watching. She was used to having a task, a clear purpose. Mopping floors was straightforward. But observing, that felt vague. But gradually she found her rhythm. She would arrive in the morning and walk through different areas of the factory. She watched how workers did their tasks. She noticed where they struggled or had to work around problems. She listened to their conversations during breaks, and she started seeing things. Lots of things. She noticed that workers in the packaging department had to walk back and forth to a supply closet 30 times a day, because the tape dispensers were stored there instead of at their stations. That was wasted time and wasted energy. She noticed that the lighting in the south corner of the building was dim, and workers there squinted a lot. One worker had even bought his own desk lamp from home. She noticed that the schedule board was posted in only one location, so workers on the other side of the building had to walk 5 minutes to check it. Some of them just did not bother and missed important updates. She noticed that the water fountains were only on the east side of the building, so workers on the west side often went their whole shift without drinking water, because it was too far to walk during their short breaks. These were small things, simple things, but they added up. Together they made work harder than it needed to be. They wasted time and created frustration. Elena wrote everything down in her notebook. At the end of each week, she met with Mr. Richardson and shared her observations. He listened carefully, asked questions, and took action. The tape dispensers were moved to the packaging stations. The dim lights were replaced. A second schedule board was installed. New water fountains were added on the west side, workers noticed. They started coming to Elena with their own observations and ideas. You know what would really help? They would say. And Elena would write it down. She became a bridge between the workers and the management. Workers trusted her because she was one of them. She had worked the night shift. She had cleaned the floors. She understood what it was like to be at the bottom of the hierarchy, but now she also had the ear of the CEO. She could actually make changes happen. One day, about 2 months into her new job, Elena was walking past the third conveyor junction. The plastic bins were now stored in their proper location, marked clearly with painted lines and signs. A metal barrier had been installed to prevent anyone from placing bins too close to the sensor. The assembly line hummed smoothly. No jams, no alarms, no frustrated workers standing around waiting for repairs. Dr. Peterson walked over to her. How are you doing in your new role? He asked. I think I am doing okay, Elena said. I keep finding things to improve. That is because you are good at this, Dr. Peterson said. You know, I have been thinking a lot about what happened that day in the conference room, about why we missed something so obvious. You were focused on the technical aspects, Elena said. That is your job. Yes, but I should have been focused on the whole picture, Dr. Peterson said. Engineers like me, we get caught up in the complexity. We want to find elegant solutions to complicated problems. Sometimes we forget that the best solutions are simple. He looked at the assembly line. Moving bins. That is all it took. Not a $200,000 overhaul. Not new software. Just moving bins and adding a barrier. The simplest possible solution. Elena smiled. My grandmother used to say the answer is usually right in front of your face. You just have to be willing to look. Dr. Peterson laughed. Your grandmother was a wise woman. They stood together for a moment, watching the line run smoothly. Can I ask you something? Dr. Peterson said. Of course. How did you have the courage to speak up that day? You must have known how it would look. The cleaning lady telling the engineers they were wrong. Elena thought about this. I was scared. Very scared. But I thought about the workers who would lose hours if the line shut down. I thought about the families depending on those paychecks. And I decided that helping them was more important than protecting my pride. Dr. Peterson nodded slowly. You were brave. And you were right. That is a powerful combination. As Elena walked away, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt valued. She felt seen. Not because of what she wore or what degree she had, but because of what she noticed and what she chose to say. The simple explanation had been there all along. Someone just needed to be brave enough to give it. 3 months passed since Elena started her new position. The factory was running better than it had in years. The assembly line had not jammed once. Production numbers were up. Workers seemed happier, but the real validation came from an unexpected source. Mr. Richardson called Elena into his office one morning. When she arrived, she found him sitting with Dr. Peterson and a woman she did not recognize. The woman wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Elena, this is Ms. Chen from the Manufacturing Excellence Association, Mr. Richardson said. They are an organization that studies best practices in factories across the country. Ms. Chen stood and shook Elena's hand firmly. I have been hearing very interesting things about your factory, she said. About a problem that was solved in a very unusual way. I wanted to come see for myself. Elena felt nervous. What would you like to know? Everything, Ms. Chen said with a smile. Start from the beginning. So Elena told the story again. About noticing the bins. About the pattern of the jams. About having the courage to speak up in the meeting. Ms. Chen listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. When Elena finished, Ms. Chen sat back and shook her head in amazement. This is exactly the kind of case study we look for. A simple solution to what seemed like a complex problem, but what makes it special is where the solution came from. What do you mean? Elena asked. Most innovations in manufacturing come from engineers or consultants, Ms. Chen explained. People with advanced degrees and years of training. But your solution came from direct observation, from being present on the floor, from understanding the human element of how work actually gets done, not just how it is supposed to get done. She turned to Mr. Richardson. I would like to write about this, with your permission, of course. I think other companies could learn from what happened here. Mr. Richardson looked at Elena. What do you think? Are you comfortable with that? Elena felt a flutter of panic. Write about me? In what way? I would describe the problem, the solution, and how the solution was discovered, Ms. Chen said. I would interview you about your methods, about how you observe, about what made you notice things others missed. It would be published in our quarterly journal, which goes to manufacturing companies across the country. Elena's first instinct was to say no. She did not want attention. She was not special. She had just done what made sense. But then she thought about other factories. Other workers like Maria and Mr. Chen who had good ideas but might be afraid to share them. Other cleaning staff or maintenance workers or floor workers who saw things but felt invisible. If her story could help them feel empowered to speak up, maybe that was worth the discomfort. Okay, Elena said. I will do it. Over the next few weeks, Ms. Chen visited the factory several times. She interviewed Elena at length. She talked to workers on the floor. She spoke with Dr. Peterson and Mr. Richardson. She took photographs and gathered data. Elena felt strange being the center of attention. Workers would wave at her as Ms. Chen followed her around. Some of them teased her good-naturedly. Look, it is our celebrity, they would say, but most of them seemed proud. Proud that someone from their factory, Someone who had been one of them was being recognized. It made them feel valued too. During one of the interviews, Ms. Chen asked Elena a question that made her think, "What do you think is the main difference between how you approach problems and how the engineers approached this problem?" Elena considered this carefully. "I think engineers look for complicated answers. They have been trained to think about systems and technology, and most of the time that is exactly what you need. But sometimes the problem is not in the system. It is in how people are using the system." Ms. Chen nodded. "So you focus on the human element?" "I focus on reality," Elena said. "I look at what is actually happening, not what should be happening according to the manual. There are always differences between the two." "Can you give me another example?" Ms. Chen asked. Elena thought for a moment. "Last week I noticed that the workers in the welding department were making a lot of mistakes in the afternoon. More bad welds that had to be redone. I watched for a few days and I realized it always happened after lunch. What was causing it? The cafeteria serves very heavy lunches. Lots of fried food, big portions. The welders were eating these huge meals and then going right back to work that requires steady hands and focus. They were too full. They felt sluggish. Their concentration dropped." Ms. Chen laughed. "What did you do?" "I talked to the cafeteria manager. We started offering lighter lunch options. Salads, grilled chicken, fresh fruit. We also added a poster explaining how heavy meals can affect your work performance. We did not force anyone to change. We just gave them information and options." "And did it help?" "Yes. After 2 weeks, the afternoon error rate in welding dropped by 30%. Some workers still eat the heavy meals, and that is fine, but many of them switched to lighter options because they noticed they felt better and worked better." Ms. Chen was typing rapidly on her tablet. "This is perfect. This is exactly what I mean. You did not change the welding equipment. You did not require more training. You looked at the whole picture of the worker's experience and found a simple solution." Elena smiled. "I just asked myself, why are they making mistakes? What is different in the afternoon than in the morning?" Once I had the question right, the answer was obvious. The article came out 2 months later. Ms. Chen had titled it, "The Power of Presence: How One Observer Solved What Engineers Could Not." Mr. Richardson ordered copies for everyone in the company. He posted the article on the bulletin boards throughout the factory. Workers gathered around to read it, pointing at the photograph of Elena standing next to the assembly line. Elena felt embarrassed by all the attention, but also proud. The article explained the problem and the solution clearly. It praised the engineering team for being willing to listen. It talked about the importance of creating workplaces where everyone feels empowered to contribute ideas. But the real impact came from outside the factory. Companies started calling. Factory managers wanted to know more. Some asked if Elena could visit their facilities and train their staff. Others wanted to know how to create similar positions at their companies. Mr. Richardson was thrilled. "Do you realize what this means?" he said to Elena. "You have not just helped our factory. You are changing how people think about problem solving in manufacturing." Elena was not sure about that. She had just shared what she noticed, but she was beginning to understand that maybe her perspective was more valuable than she had realized. One day, a package arrived for her at the factory. It was from a factory in Ohio. Inside was a letter from their safety manager. "Dear Elena," the letter said, "I read the article about you in Manufacturing Excellence Journal. Your story inspired me to speak up about something I have been noticing at our plant. For months I have seen workers taking a shortcut through a certain area, even though it is marked as restricted. I assumed they knew what they were doing, so I never said anything. But after reading your story, I reported it to my supervisor. We investigated and discovered that the shortcut saved workers 5 minutes, but it also exposed them to potential danger from overhead equipment. We have now created a safer alternate path that is almost as quick. Thank you for inspiring me to trust my observations and speak up." Elena read the letter 3 times. Then she showed it to her daughter that evening. "Mama, you are changing things," her daughter said. "You are making a real difference." "I just told the truth about what I saw," Elena said. "That is exactly what makes it powerful," her daughter replied. "Most people see things but do not say anything. You said something, and now other people are saying something too." More letters came, more phone calls. Other factories wanted to learn from Westfield Manufacturing's experience. Mr. Richardson decided to create a training program. He asked Elena to help develop it. Together with Dr. Peterson, they created a workshop called Seeing the Whole Picture, Observation Skills for Problem Solving. The workshop taught workers at all levels how to observe their workplace more carefully, how to notice patterns, how to ask good questions, how to speak up about what they saw, even if they did not have fancy titles or degrees. Elena co-taught the first workshop. She was terrified. She had never taught anything before. But Mr. Richardson encouraged her. Just tell them what you do. Show them how you think. The workshop room was full. Engineers, managers, floor workers, maintenance staff. Everyone wanted to learn. Elena started by telling her story about the assembly line. Then she explained her methods. I walk slowly. I do not rush. I watch people work. I pay attention to small things. I ask myself questions. Why do they do it that way? What makes this harder than it needs to be? What patterns do I see? She gave them an exercise. Go to your work area and spend 30 minutes just watching. Do not do any work. Just watch. Notice things you have never noticed before. Then write down 3 observations. When the workers came back, they shared what they had seen. A maintenance worker had noticed that one machine vibrated more than the others. An office worker had noticed that people had to ask the same questions over and over because information was not posted anywhere. A floor worker had noticed that the tool they used most was stored farthest away from where they needed it. Small things. Simple things. But things that could be improved. Now ask yourself, Elena said, why has no one fixed these things before? Hands went up around the room. Because we assumed someone else would notice, one person said. Because we thought it was not important enough to mention, said another. Because we did not think anyone would listen to us, said a third. Elena nodded. Those are all real barriers. But here is what I have learned. Small improvements add up, and everyone's observations matter. You do not need a degree to notice that something is not working well. You just need to pay attention and have the courage to speak up. After the workshop, Dr. Peterson pulled Elena aside. You are a natural teacher, he said. You made complex ideas simple and accessible. That is a rare gift. Elena felt uncomfortable with praise, but she was learning to accept it. I just shared what I know. That is what good teachers do, Dr. Peterson said. That evening, Elena sat in her small apartment, looking at everything that had changed in 6 months. She had a new job that paid well. Her daughter was able to cut back her hours at work. Her grandchildren had new school clothes and enough food. The stress that had weighed on their family for years had lifted. But more than the money, Elena felt different inside. She felt valued. She felt capable. She felt like her life mattered in ways she had never imagined. She thought about the younger version of herself, the woman who had taken the cleaning job 15 years ago because she was desperate and scared. That woman had felt so small, so invisible. If she could go back and tell that woman what would happen, she would not believe it. That her observations would matter. That her voice would be heard. That her simple way of seeing things would help not just one factory, but many. Elena pulled out her notebook and wrote down a thought. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest observations. You just have to be willing to look and brave enough to speak. She closed the notebook and smiled. The validation she had received from Ms. Chen, from the article, from the letters and phone calls, all of that was meaningful, but the real validation had come from within herself. She had learned that she was capable of more than she thought. That her perspective had value. That being present and paying attention was not just a way to clean floors. It was a way to change things. And that was the most important lesson of all. 1 year after Elena solved the assembly line problem, Westfield Manufacturing held a special ceremony. The factory floor had been cleaned and decorated. Tables with refreshments lined the walls. All the workers had been invited along with their families. Local news reporters set up cameras in the back. Elena stood backstage in a side office wearing a new dress her daughter had bought for her. She could hear the crowd gathering outside. She felt the familiar nervousness rising in her chest. Mr. Richardson knocked and entered. Are you ready? Elena took a deep breath. I think so. What exactly is happening out there? Mr. Richardson smiled. You will see. Trust me, it is all good. They walked out together onto a small stage that had been set up. The crowd quieted down. Elena saw familiar faces. Workers she had talked to, engineers she had worked with, her daughter and grandchildren sitting in the front row. Mr. Richardson stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. Today is a special day for Westfield Manufacturing. A year ago, we had a problem that was costing us thousands of dollars and causing endless frustration. Despite our best efforts and our best people, we could not solve it. He paused and looked at Elena. Then one person had the courage to speak up. Someone we had overlooked for 15 years. Someone whose job had never been to solve problems, just to clean up after everyone else. But she saw what we could not see, and she changed everything. The crowd started to applaud. Elena felt her face grow warm. Mr. Richardson continued. Elena's solution saved this company hundreds of thousands of dollars. But more importantly, she changed how we think about problem solving. She taught us to listen to everyone, not just the people with fancy titles. She showed us that wisdom can come from any corner of this building. He picked up a plaque from a table beside him. Elena, on behalf of Westfield Manufacturing, I am proud to present you with the Employee of the Year award. But this is not just about 1 year. This is about 15 years of dedication, of showing up every night and doing your job with care. This is about having the courage to speak when silence would have been easier. This is about making all of us better at what we do. Elena walked forward, tears in her eyes. She accepted the plaque. The crowd stood and applauded loudly. She saw workers she had cleaned up after, managers she had barely spoken to, engineers who had doubted her. All of them were clapping. All of them were smiling. When the applause finally died down, Mr. Richardson handed her the microphone. Would you like to say a few words? Elena had not prepared a speech. She looked out at all the faces watching her. She thought about what she wanted to say. Thank you, she began, her voice shaking slightly. This has been the strangest year of my life. A year ago, I was mopping floors and emptying trash cans. I never imagined standing here like this. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I want to tell you something important. I am not special. I did not do anything that any of you could not do. I just paid attention. I watched. I listened. And when I saw something, I said something. She looked around the room. How many of you have noticed things at work that could be better? Raise your hands. Almost every hand went up. How many of you have kept quiet about those things because you thought no one would listen, or because you did not think it was your place to speak up? Many hands stayed up and people looked around at each other with recognition. That is what I want to change, Elena said. Not just here, but everywhere. Every person in this room has valuable observations. Every person sees things from their unique position. The floor workers see things the managers do not see. The maintenance crew sees things the engineers do not see. And yes, even the cleaning staff sees things everyone else misses. She felt her confidence growing. I was invisible for 15 years. Most people did not even know my name. And that is okay. I understand everyone is busy. But invisibility gave me a gift. It let me see clearly. No one was performing for me or hiding anything from me. I saw the truth of how things actually worked. Dr. Peterson was nodding from the front row. Now I am not invisible anymore. Elena continued. And that is good because I can help make changes. But I do not want to be the only one who speaks up. I want all of you to know that your voices matter. Your observations matter. No matter what your job title is, you have something important to contribute. She held up the plaque. This award is not just for me. It is for everyone who has ever felt like their opinion did not matter. It is for everyone who has ever stayed quiet when they should have spoken. It is for everyone who has ever thought they were not smart enough or important enough to make a difference. The room was completely silent. Everyone was listening. I am not educated, Elena said. I do not have degrees or certificates. I cannot do calculus or write computer code. But I can watch. I can think. I can ask questions, and it turns out that is enough. That is more than enough. She looked at the young people in the crowd, including her own grandchildren. If you remember one thing from today, remember this. You do not need anyone's permission to notice things. You do not need a fancy title to have good ideas. You just need to pay attention and have the courage to speak up when you see something that matters. The crowd erupted in applause again. This time it was louder, more enthusiastic. People were standing, cheering. Elena saw workers wiping their eyes. She saw managers nodding thoughtfully. She saw her daughter crying proud tears. After the ceremony, people lined up to talk to Elena. Workers thanked her for making them feel valued. Managers asked for advice about how to create more inclusive workplaces. Young people asked her how she found the courage to speak up. One young woman, maybe 20 years old, shyly approached. I work in the office, she said. I am just an assistant. But I have noticed something about our scheduling system. It wastes a lot of time. I have been afraid to say anything because I am new and I thought people would think I was being pushy. Elena smiled at her. What have you noticed? The young woman explained her observation. It was detailed and made perfect sense. That is an excellent observation, Elena said. You should absolutely share it with your supervisor. Tell them I encouraged you to speak up. The young woman's face brightened. Really? You think they will listen? If they do not listen to you, you come talk to me, Elena said. I will make sure they listen, because your observation matters. This happened again and again throughout the afternoon. People sharing what they had noticed, asking if it was worth mentioning, seeking encouragement to speak up. Elena realized that this was the real impact of her story. Not the money saved or the award on the wall, it was the permission she had given people to trust their own observations, to believe their voices mattered. That evening, the local news aired a story about the ceremony. The reporter interviewed Elena about her journey from cleaning lady to operational observer. The story spread online. By the next morning, it had been shared thousands of times. Elena's phone started ringing with more interview requests. A business magazine wanted to feature her in an article. A university asked her to speak to their engineering students. A non-profit organization that supported working women wanted to give her an award. It was overwhelming. Elena was not used to this kind of attention, but her daughter helped her manage it all. This is your moment, Mama, she said. You have earned this. Enjoy it. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of an auditorium filled with 500 people. She had been invited to speak at a national manufacturing conference. The topic was innovation from unexpected sources. She told her story once again. But each time she told it, she understood it better. She saw more clearly what had happened and why it mattered. The assembly line problem was solved by moving bins 3 feet, she told the audience. That is the simple, practical answer. But the real problem was not about bins at all. The real problem was that we had created a workplace where only certain people's observations were valued. Only certain voices were heard. She clicked to the next slide, which showed a photo of the factory floor. In every workplace, there are people doing important work who never get asked for their opinions. Cleaning staff, maintenance workers, assistants, part-time employees. They see things every day that could make operations better, safer, more efficient. But they stay quiet because they do not think anyone will listen. She clicked again. This slide showed a simple equation. Observation plus courage, change. It is not enough to notice things, Elena explained. You have to have the courage to speak up. And it is not enough for workers to speak up. Leaders have to have the courage to listen, really listen, even when the message comes from someone unexpected. After her presentation, during the question period, a man in an expensive suit raised his hand. I am the CEO of a manufacturing company in Texas. I want to implement something like your operational observer position, but my board thinks it is too risky to give that much authority to someone without a technical background. How would you respond to that concern? Elena thought for a moment. I would ask your board this question. What is more risky? Hiring someone to observe and report what they see? Or missing problems because you are only listening to people who think the same way? The assembly line problem cost Westfield Manufacturing thousands of dollars every week for 3 months. All the technical experts missed it. The risk is not in listening to different perspectives. The risk is in ignoring them. The audience applauded. The CEO nodded thoughtfully and sat down. After the conference, Elena flew home. As she sat on the plane, she looked at the folder of materials she had collected. Business cards from people who wanted to connect. Invitations to speak at other events. Requests for consulting work. A year ago, she had been invisible. Now she was in demand. It was surreal, but she knew she had to be careful. It would be easy to get caught up in the attention, the praise, the opportunities. What mattered most was not her own success. It was the message. It was helping other people find their voices. When she got home, her youngest grandchild ran to hug her. Grandma, you were on TV again. Elena laughed and picked her up. Was I? What did they say? They said you are inspiring. What does that mean? Elena thought about how to explain this to a 6-year-old. It means that when people hear my story, it makes them want to be brave. It makes them believe they can do hard things too. Like when you taught me to ride my bike? Her grandchild asked. Exactly like that, Elena said. I told you that you could do it even though you were scared. And you did it. Now I'm telling lots of grown-ups that they can do hard things too. Her daughter came into the room. Mama, there is someone on the phone for you. It is the governor's office. Elena's eyes widened. The governor? Why would the governor be calling me? She took the phone nervously. Hello? The voice on the other end explained that the governor wanted to recognize Elena's contributions to workplace innovation. She was being awarded the state's Excellence in Industry Award. The ceremony would be in the Capitol next month. When Elena hung up, she sat down heavily on the couch. The State Excellence Award. Her mind could barely process it. Mama, you are famous now, her daughter said with a smile. I am not famous, Elena protested. I just spoke up in a meeting. You did more than that. You changed how people think. You gave people hope. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Elena sat alone in the quiet apartment. She pulled out the old notebook she had carried during her cleaning days. The pages were worn, filled with notes about which areas needed extra attention, which supplies were running low, which light bulbs needed replacing. She flipped to the last page and wrote a new entry. 1 year ago, I raised my hand in a meeting and my life changed forever. But the real change was not about me. It was about showing that everyone has something valuable to contribute, that simple observations can solve complex problems. That courage is not about being fearless, it is about speaking up even when you're afraid. I thought I was just a cleaning lady. But I was always more than that. Everyone is more than their job title. Everyone has wisdom to share. Sometimes you just need someone to give you permission to believe in yourself. I hope my story gives that permission to others, to the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who think they have nothing important to say. You do, your observations matter. Your voice matters. You matter. Trust what you see. Find your courage. Speak your truth. You might be surprised by what happens next. Elena closed the notebook and looked around her apartment. The same walls, the same furniture. But everything felt different now. She felt different. She was no longer invisible. But more importantly, she had helped others see that they did not have to be invisible either. The simple woman who solved an impossible problem had become something more. She had become proof that wisdom is not about education or status. It is about paying attention, thinking clearly, and having the courage to share what you know. And that was the greatest recognition of all, not the awards or the articles or the speaking invitations. It was knowing that her story had opened doors for others, that somewhere right now someone was finding the courage to speak up because they had heard about the cleaning lady who changed everything by moving some bins. Simple problems sometimes need simple solutions. But finding those solutions requires people who are willing to look with fresh eyes, think with clear minds, and speak with honest voices. Elena had proven that anyone could be that person. You did not need a degree. You did not need a fancy title. You just needed to pay attention and be brave. And that lesson, she hoped, would last far longer than any assembly line, any factory, any award on any wall. That lesson was the real gift. And it was a gift she would keep sharing for as long as people were willing to listen.